machine can sew a beautiful 4-step buttonhole. Let's see how to do that. No matter what kind of fabric you're going to sew your buttonhole on, you're going to want to use a stabilizer to keep the stitches from puckering. Place your button on the fabric where you want to sew the buttonhole and mark the fabric with a removable fabric marking pen or pencil. You can use a ruler. Mark the top and bottom of the button and then use a ruler to connect them. Next, we need to change to the buttonhole foot. Raise the presser foot lifter and push forward on the foot that's on the machine to release it, and place the buttonhole foot on the machine like this. Bring your upper thread through the opening of the foot and put both threads to the back under the presser foot. Your stitch selector dial has icons that indicate the 4 different steps of your buttonhole. We're going to start with step number 1, so I'm going to turn my stitch selector dial so that step number 1 lines up with this marking on the main part of my machine. When I look at this image on the stitch selector dial, it says number 1, meaning the first step of my buttonhole, and there's a small arrow here pointing up, which means I'm going to sew from the bottom of the buttonhole up to the top of the buttonhole, and that tells me how to place my fabric under the foot. So we're going to sew from the bottom of the buttonhole up. So I'm going to line up this sideways white line with these 2 little red lines on the sides of the opening of my buttonhole foot, with the vertical line that I drew going up the middle. Bring both threads off to the side to just keep them out of the way of your buttonhole. Then step on the foot control to start sewing. And you're going to sew up until you reach the top of the buttonhole. Raise the needle out of the fabric. Then on your stitch selector dial, we're going to turn this to number 2. It shows me a number 2 at the top here, so we're going to sew a few stitches to do the top of the buttonhole. Turn the hand wheel so the needle is out of the fabric, and then turn it to number 3, and you'll see an arrow here which tells me I'm going to sew from the top of the buttonhole down to the bottom to sew the other side of the buttonhole. When you reach the bottom of the buttonhole, raise the needle out of the fabric and turn it back to number 4, which shows me that will be the bottom of the buttonhole. Sew a few stitches, then turn the hand wheel all the way down and back up until it just begins to descend. Then raise the presser foot lifter and remove your work from the machine. You can use a hand needle to bring your thread tails to the back side, then tie them off to secure. And to open the buttonhole, first place a pin into the end of your buttonhole and use your machine's seam ripper to carefully cut through the fabric . The pin will prevent you from accidentally cutting through the top stitches of your buttonhole. And then just remove the pin, and there's your beautiful 4-step buttonhole for your button.